Welcome to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. I am Juliette Hahn. I'm here with my co-host, Brent Sopel, and we are here to change the narrative. We want to educate, but we also want you guys to understand what it is like to be dyslexic and how things can change. So join us every week for Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. Welcome back to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. So this is Dyslexic Awareness Month, and we have special guests all month, but this is, this is going to be interesting, you guys. You've heard all of our other episodes. This is going to be some amazing conversations, but there's going to be a lot of laughs. So I'm here with my co-host, Brent Sopel, and also our special guest, Danielle Fette. How are you guys?
I'm great. I'm ready to have some fun.
Happy Thanksgiving.
That's right. Happy Canadian Thanksgiving. It is Canadian Thanksgiving.
So rude. So rude.
I forgot to say Happy Thanksgiving.
Sorry.
Yes, we have to know that the Canadians. But so I'm going to introduce Danielle a little bit.
Yes,
and then even
do.
though Brent says he doesn't like to ask questions, he's so full of shit because he asks questions. He asks very poignant questions. And yes, that was a big word, but he does ask very specific.
Did you hit the dictionary this morning?
I did just for this. So Danielle, first of all, Danielle's my boss that anyone knows. And I love this so much. But Danielle, I go way back. We've known each other forever. But Danielle is in the pioneer of tissue engineering. She and her husband have created this amazing, so many products. We're not going to get into that. That's going to be a whole nother podcast. But the thing that it's crazy that Danielle is the founder of FetTech. And then again, if you want to go search that, you can go to fettech.com because what they're doing in the regenerative medicine space is it is so incredible. Danielle's heart, which you're going to feel here, and just her journey of how she got to where she is one story that literally is going to inspire you on so many different levels. So I know Brent has 1,000 questions because he loves to ask questions. But I know you paused there. So now I'm going to jump in again. But this is the thing that is before we got on, everyone knows that Brent and I always talk a little bit before our podcast, and then we come on and start talking about kind of some topics. Danielle and Brent and I literally were just laughing hysterical, and I think Brent's head turned around 30 times. And as we get into this podcast and you hear Danielle's story and what she's been doing and her heart, that's the thing that you guys are going to hear, her heart and what she's doing in so many different avenues. But I'm just going to stop there.
But you know what, Julia, I actually needed that comic relief. And all jokes aside, I told Brent that I could be talking to the CEO of Pfizer or Oprah Winfrey, honestly, and I could feel comfortable. But coming into this podcast, my palms are sweating. I've never been so nervous. So it felt really good. It was almost like that class clown back in the day of elementary school when you're really shitting yourself nervous to just get some emotions out and have someone bond with you that's in your corner, because this is not comfortable for me to talk about. We'll be in meetings and I'll say, you guys, I have dyslexia. I want everyone to know, but it's not comfortable to really think about my journey and the things I've had to overcome to get here as a young kid in school.
Well, obviously, I know you're busy at your sister's. You're getting ready to go to school here soon. You just finished working out, did yoga this morning, so I'm glad you found time for us. But you touched upon something there. Obviously, take us through your journey a little bit, but when you're in meetings and you say you're dyslexic, there's saying the word and being okay are two different things. Where are you in part of your journey in that?
I am really proud of where I am now and the warrior that I am and what I've had to overcome. So I almost look at myself as someone that needs to speak up and say, I have dyslexia. It's hard for me to read. It's hard for me to write an email. Can I do it? Yeah. It takes a lot of time. It's really hard. Yeah. And thank God for advanced technology. But it makes me feel good to speak up because I want to inspire other people. However, that is very different than if we were to talk about the little girl in 3rd grade that sat there crying while I felt stupid and my kids were in a really smart reading group and I was constantly playing a role I felt so that no one realized how uncomfortable and an outsider looking in I actually felt my whole life. So they're two different things. Feeling the emotions of the little girl is different than me being able as an adult to say, look what I've overcome, you guys. I have dyslexia and I'm proud that I have been able to overcome a lot. but it doesn't mean those emotions and some of the pain and feelings go away.
I always say dyslexics have the most scars, the deepest. We hurt longer, stronger, and deeper than anybody. You know, it's because we get told we're dumb and stupid because nobody believes us. You know, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're blind, you get more help than we do, and people just think we're full of it. You know, at what age did you get diagnosed and have the tag dyslexia to your name?
I don't know the exact age, but it was really young. My mom was a special ed teacher, and I was fortunate.
Oh, new rabbit hole we're going to go down. Yes.
I was fortunate enough that my mom literally, I was the oldest cousin. My mom was of 7 siblings, and I genuinely felt like people idolized and respected how smart I was. No matter who I was with in the family, they looked up to me like, this girl is so smart. Oh, leave it up to Danielle. She'll figure it out. She's clever. And it was almost hard in the sense I would go to school and I'm like, if only they really knew what I was like. So I was constantly playing a role. You know, Julia, I think you referred to it as imposter syndrome. You know, and I'm beating around the bush a little bit, but I think this is really important. I constantly was playing a role. I was ahead, and I have listened to you, Brett, say, Brett, you could stare down the road and see what was coming, and I could see so clearly what was coming that I was so quick at avoiding those obstacles by making certain people like me, going to the bathroom when I needed to, memorizing the 2 sentences when I know like 10 people later, those were my 2 sentences to read out loud. So I was constantly playing a role and disguising what was really wrong with me, other than the fact I was getting like D's and C's, and if I got a C, I was like, oh my God, this is the best day ever. But I was young, really young. My parents juggled schools. I was constantly going, and I was blessed in the fact they could afford private schools, but special learning after school. And no matter what I did, I never felt like I was able to learn. And eventually I just realized, thank God I played sports, because there's no way I would have gotten into college without sports, like 0 chance.
That's good. I'm still on one more for you can have all your questions.
No, I love this.
You know, I can see so many things clearly happening. You know, it may come fruition, you know, a month or 2 months down the road. You know, I get looked at, you know, every single time. What are you talking about? How do you don't know? You're lying. You're full of shit. Was that the same thing? Because I'm going through it right now, where I'm working. You know, people trying to get me fired. I know exactly what they're doing, and you know, I get told I got no idea what's coming, and I can see it clear as day. How did you handle that portion when you knew exactly what was going to happen?
I almost became obsessed with the clever game of like beating everyone at their own game, and I still can do it now.
Isn't that womanism?
No, not like that. Like I don't know. Like I could see over here teachers and all the other kids weren't aware because they were so focused on like whatever else they were focused on. And I would get slick and be like, shit, I have to get out of school and go to the payphone. Yes, we had them back then. And call the office and get myself out of school. I mean, it's just not manipulative with like my friends because I'm a really loyal, good friend. But it's just was that survival, you know, I can figure things out of a bad situation really quickly. And I'm pretty confident that's what brings me today where I am with my company. Because there's always problems, and I'm like, I don't freak out if there's problems. It's like, oh, cool. I'm good at figuring this out. You know, I got this, no problem. I've had problems my whole entire life. And when school is really easy, that's when my problems started. You know, and I can remember as early as nursery school, being in the corner and feeling really embarrassed. And like I didn't have friends. And my mom, to this day, you know, and people around me are confused. It's not that they don't believe me, but it's like everyone wanted to be your friend. Everyone, what do you mean? What are you talking about? But I never felt like I fit in because I always felt different.
So this is what's interesting because Brent, after we interviewed Ashley, I did go to Danielle because I said to her, I said, you know, it's interesting. And survival mode is one thing that we talk about. When we're in survivor mode, it's really hard to ask questions, to talk, to connect, to do anything because you're in survivor mode. Like school was pretty much for us, all of us, survivor mode. Like, so if someone came to you and you wanted to talk deeper, it's like, you can't go there. And I'm referring to like my son, who's a senior right now. There's things that I know I cannot even approach approach or discuss because he is in survival mode. He is just trying to get out. But the talking about friends, because Danielle and I, obviously, we went to school together and we ran in the same circles. So I was saying to her, I said, it's so interesting because we played sports together. I always had a lot of friends. I did have my one friend across the street, Megan Doolin. If you ever listen to this, we had such a great relationship, and she was my person. And then also my siblings, we were all really close, but I did have a lot of friends. But when after Ashley and Brent, you've brought this up a lot, because I was like, well, I don't remember ever feeling like the outside or whatever, but I was always the funny one. I was always the silly one. And I know that when I think about it, I guess that was the role I put on myself. So I wasn't found out about certain things. And I think when Danielle and I started talking about it, and she said, yes, she didn't always feel like she always felt like she had to keep up or like she didn't want to have people know about like that she was struggling as much as she was in school. And again, I know, Brent, that's something that you and Ashley were even talking about. And I find it fascinating because I think, even with attention deficit, I always would say, like, I have the good attention deficit. Like, I can read people really well. I wasn't the kid that was like in the face of like someone that was like, you're a really close talker. I was really intuitive to that, because we know those kids, right? That would come so close to your face that you're like, oh my God. And so there's so many levels, and we talk about spectrums, right? We talk about the levels of dyslexia, the levels of ADHD, the levels of people's personality, and really in all aspects that happens. So Danielle, if you could, again, you remember in preschool, because one of the things now that we're working together that I find so fascinating, and again, I think you're one of the most brilliant people. I say this all the time. I mean, the things that the meetings that we're on, like with scientists, and you are talking, it sometimes blows my mind, because I'm like, God, she is so smart, but I also know where your struggles are. So I find the human brain so fascinating. So when you were young in like even you're saying in nursery school, and you remember those journeys, what were the aspects of school that you actually were like, okay, I can grasp onto this because I'm kind of okay in this subject, or were there any of them?
No, none. I hated school. I hated every second of school. Couldn't wait to get out of school. To this day, as an adult, when I worked for corporate America, and we'd have a week of training, I wanted to die and get out of there. But what I did learn is what kids I felt maybe a little safer with than others. And I don't want to use the word I felt safe, but they're always you have to find out of the group the one that could help you the most, whether it's a teacher, a person. So I'm definitely the first one to be like, I don't know, and I need help right now. And again, I think that's something that contributes to my success. But Brent, you said something earlier, Brent, that was really, I'm almost starting to believe that people with dyslexia, not that we have a sixth sense, but there's so much more. I believe this. There's so much more than what we see and feel in life. Like I'm really intrigued by the universe and energy and that innate knowing. No, I'm serious. That innate knowing.
I hear it from Juliet every day.
Is it because of dyslexia and we were forced to have that knowing, or were we born with this knowing because we feel and think differently? Like almost like a dog has a sixth sense. Well, I really think that we do. I can look at someone right away and know if I'm going to feel comfortable with them or I don't want to talk to them, like immediately. And I can't remember a time where I didn't feel like that.
I always say, what you give off is what you attract. So back when, drinking and drugs days, they're so great. That's who I hung out with. Why? That's who I attracted. That's what I was, right? And our pain has been so long in so many different ways that, can we feel when somebody's struggling? Can we feel that energy of the pain? Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you an example. I had a kid I was coaching last spring. I think it might have been April, May. Dad's like, he's not feeling well. He's our goalie. He's like, I'll bring the equipment to the rink. They're Mike's 5, 6, 7 years old. So we were throwing another kid in there. He's like, yeah, we had some tests done in stomach. We're getting the results back next week. Not sure what's going on. 15-second conversation. I said, I think you may want to check in more at school. Guy's like, okay. That was the end of the conversation. That was April, May. About a month ago, he's like, I just want to say thank you. He's like, I know you're not going to know why. I'm like, no, I have no idea. He goes, well, that teacher is no longer working in the school district. So something happened. In a 15-second conversation, I knew it was school. So when I say you can almost read minds when I'm working with people, yeah, I almost can. Like in a 15-second conversation, the dad's like, yeah, the teacher's not there. Most people wouldn't even think about it, wouldn't understand it. It's the way people say things. It's it's the way we set up conversations. It's the way they react to it. It's what words they use. We've had to use all those little strategies to be able to get around our lives, to zigzag, to lie all day long. Now, we're faking it to make it, and we use those little things to be able to fake and make it.
It's so true. And, even when Juliet was announcing me, I felt like, gosh, it's humbling, but I'm like, really? I'm doing all that? And, going back to your question, Juliet, about like what subjects. And so I knew I always wanted to go into medicine, but at the same sense, everyone laughed in my face and I laughed at myself. I can't take a test. Well, you can't really go into medicine unless you can take a test. But I wanted to help people. And if a kid fell on the playground and was bleeding, kids would run away. And I was the first, I couldn't help it. It was innate sense to run over and want to help them. And so as an adult, and as I got more into medicine through my, very odd path I took to get here, where I excelled were areas of medicine that are not understood and are very subjective. So it's not like orthopedic where a screw goes into here, you put it here, and this is the outcome. Each area of medicine I've always dabbled in, I could not help you at all. The areas where I've exceeded, like wound care, nobody knows what the body needs and when it needs it. You ask 50 people, they're all going to tell you a different way to get from A to Z, and it's still, a lot of it, it's like an intuitive kind of knowing and trial and error, where I'm really good at figuring things out faster than everyone. So there's certain areas in medicine where everyone else is like, oh, I don't know, that I can just figure out. And to me, it's kind of common sense. And I'm looking around the room like, didn't you guys all go to like Harvard med school? Like, how do you not know this? Like, I'm just a peon off the street that barely got through school because I cheated and had teachers help me. And it's common sense to me because it's a feeling of how to figure things out. So like puzzles or Clue or chess or anything game related. Oh yeah, I can. Poker. I'm really good at poker.
Well, see, Brent hates board games, and we talk about this because I always kind of liked that too, like figuring out puzzles. So that was something that I always loved.
Not all board games.
No, I know, not all board games, but right.
And games bore the shit out of me. But the ones where you like have
to figure things out.
Someone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. And I think another word that is really been brought up throughout every podcast that we've done and every interview now is the intuitive. And Brent, correct me if I'm wrong, but the intuitiveness, I think, is something that is 100% comes with dyslexia. We are very intuitive. We can read people, we can see things, and everyone has their levels. I mean, the two of you, there's times where I laugh because you'll be like, I have the sixth sense, and then I'll be talking to Brent, and he says the same thing. Yeah. You guys have, I think, a little bit of a deeper intuitiveness or like sixth sense, where I don't think I have as deep. I think there's different things. And I think that's what's so fascinating about the brain, that when people, again, when we struggle, I was just actually talking to a friend and she's like, what were your grades? And I told her, and I then started laughing. I go, I didn't cheat very well. But then I remember what my family was going through. And I think I didn't want to get in trouble because I didn't want to like upset my parents. So like I did the bare minimum just to get by. But like I know kids, even now talking to adults that we went to high school with that, are reaching out to me because of this podcast. And like, I didn't know that you were dyslexic. I knew we were in the same resource room, but I didn't realize that that's what, and I was like, I know, it's so crazy. And them saying how, they're cheating and what their grades were. I was like, yeah, I don't think I did that ever that great. I mean, I did a lot of it, but one of the things, and again, we need to have people understand this. Again, it's not an IQ thing. And I'm going to say that on every fucking podcast because it's not an IQ thing. Most dyslexics actually have higher IQ. And when we say we cheat, it's not a deceiving thing. It's so we don't get found out and we can make it. And we figure out ways to get around. And that's when in life, when you're getting around systems in school and then you go out into the real world, you're able to figure things out in a different way because you were able to kind of work those tools and work that part of your brain and your personality.
My daughter's 11, and confidence, as I know you've preached on this podcast, is everything. So she's almost annoyed at this point at me every day. She's okay, Mom, you said that before. Mom, I don't need the lesson today, in 6th grade. But I was like, do you know Albert Einstein had dyslexia? Some of the most smartest people in the world have dyslexia. And she goes, really? And I'm like, oh gosh, I hope I'm not just lying right now. I'm like, watch, I'll Google it. And I asked Siri, and it came up like Richard Branson, like some of the people that I really think are awesome leaders, people that have done well and have had success and figured out how to get to a certain level in life. And she's looking at this, she's like, wow, that's so amazing. And then I've even told her, I'm like, humans decided what, quote, smart means as far as being able to take a test. But who's to say that we don't learn the way that we're the chosen ones? We're the ones everyone should be looking at because we can figure out the real world. I know a lot of people that got straight A's, amazing SAT scores, went to Ivy League schools and left school like, what the hell do I do with my life? Because they can't figure anything out. So who's to say that learning shouldn't be more catered towards us, and those people that hide behind taking multiplication tests and getting straight A's should be more challenged to think outside the box.
There's a few places to go on this one. Each individual is their own. Their path is their path. There's no right path. There's no wrong path. Their path is your path. So school might be for you, that multiple choice test. Great. You're smart to you is smart. However that is. And I think that, everybody talks about it should be this way, it should be that way. Well, it's going to have to be everything. And each person's unique. And us dyslexics, everybody thinks it's just flipping your B's and D's. It's like 5%. If you don't have dyslexia, just think how many times a day you read. And try struggling with every single one of them. So of course we figure our ways around it, jump around, because, I don't know anybody who loves to struggle for 8 hours a day. Oh, can I do that again tomorrow, again and again and again? No, fuck, shoot me. It's being okay with who you are is the biggest part of this all. Your daughter, self-esteem, obviously for kids nowadays, for people with dyslexia, for women that are it's self-esteem is everything. If you don't have it, I don't care who you are. You can have an IQ of whatever the hell IQ, I don't even know what it is, or you can have a great SAT. If you don't have self-esteem, you have absolutely zero in life. You're going to go nowhere, and that's why us dyslexics can go down the negative road. The drugs, the alcohol, a hell of a lot easier than the positive side, because that's all we've seen. Our negative side of our life is way more full than the positive.
Brent, it's so interesting because you asked me earlier about, me being able to say I have dyslexia. And I feel like it's my duty in life. I feel so privileged that I have the company I have. We're helping the patients we have. But I've been down to 2 very affluent private schools with my daughter, seeking the help that she needs and the program, which is a whole nother podcast. But I can't tell you how many times I've been in the room with other parents of these kids that are in special programs, and I have announced I have dyslexia, and they look at me like, oh my God, you do? There's hope for my kid? Or just the reactions of, I can feel them being ashamed or scared for their kids. And I'm like, your kid has a gift. Your kid is beautiful. Your kid's amazing. They're going to do great things in life. All this means is we learn differently. But even within the families that I speak to in a special program, I am dumbfounded by the reaction of the parents when I tell them. And then I start bragging about what I do, which I never do ever, because I want them to know, like, there's hope for everyone. Like, every kid is here on a journey, and they're going to live a very fulfilled life if they feel supported and loved. And it may not always be easy, but like, give them, stop freaking out for them, I guess.
Yeah. And, it is hard because, again, Danielle, I think one of the things that Brent and Stephen that we had on, that, his episode just aired this past week. One of the things that they were both saying is like, I will say it. Like I will be, like, hey, wait, I'm dyslexic. I feel like, again, yes, it's my duty, but I also, there's times where I feel like I want to say it because I want them to know, again, right, where I've been in my life, all the different things that I've done, all the zigzags, and talking to the parents because you want them to know. But then other times I want them to know, we're not all perfect, and it's okay to show that side of you because it is an important thing. We're all so multi-dimensional, and so many people just think of the one side, and so many people live the one-sided life where they don't want to go into what struggles are because they feel ashamed. And one of the things that we've talked about in the beginning when Brent and I started the podcast is the shame. And I remember when people used to say that word, I used to get like a little tweaked, and I was like, why don't I get tweaked with that? I hate that word, shame. I hate that word. And then I was like, there's times in my life in certain settings that I do feel shame. I feel shame like, oh my gosh, I can't amount to this. And then I'm like, what am I talking about? Like I do so many different things, and I'll take it down because, as we know, Brent always laughs, like, and both of us, Danielle, I mean, we both are confident people. We have that innate confidence, but you and I have also talked about, I do have a little bit of a freakishly a little bit more. Like I will just, I'm like, what, this is who you get. And I think that again, those are certain personality traits. But Brent, I know you want to jump in on there.
No,
what are your thoughts on that?
You're both confident. You're both confident in who you are. You're good with your journey, and that's why you're here today. Every one of us has a journey, but if you're not okay with that, if you don't go back and do that work to be okay, you're never going to have that confidence to be able to say that. And Danielle, those two schools that you talked about, who of them are running it? Teachers, part of it, are dyslexic. Do you know how many are or not?
Yeah, and every time I listen to your show, and I'm like, but would some dyslexic become a teacher? Because that would be really hard for a dyslexic person to get through that schooling. You know what I'm saying?
Last podcast, Ashley was the first time ever. I'm like,
I met ADHD. I met ADHD for sure. Mm-hmm. But it is frustrating because like I'm going in this meeting and I'm paying out the ass for like a college education for my 6th grader, and I don't feel like this new teacher knows how to teach kids with learning disabilities, and it's frustrating. But then part of me has to say, okay, like if you didn't say I had cancer, like, and I went through chemo and you didn't have it, as compassionate as you are towards me, you would never really get it because you didn't go through chemo. So I almost feel like it's one of those things, and it's heartbreaking. Because there are some really amazing teachers that care, but they're within my daughter's school. There's 2 that I can identify with it. They go out of their way to teach every child differently and foster like a hands-on creative learning environment in which kids of different disabilities can thrive, which is beautiful, but that's really rare, really rare. Mm-hmm. And I have gone through like 2 schools now, and I'm like, why is this so hard? I don't have an answer or solution, so it's frustrating. But
and that goes back to the business side of the school that Julie and I talk about. They're lying. They don't give a shit about your kid. They're charging you the money. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have it. It's school's business.
But I disagree. I think that in every business, because I see this in the hospital too. Okay. And at the end of the day, you're correct. It is a business. However, within each of these businesses, there are people that genuinely care. And then unfortunately, there's a lot of shitty people out of ego that are playing the game to get ahead or to keep their jobs. And, I see that.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that nobody doesn't care. Like, let me clarify that. I'm not saying they don't care. What they don't know is what they don't understand. 2 different things. And, like you have a doctor, I'm the best psychosis doctor. You've never had psychosis. You got no fucking idea, bud. It's a brain. You don't know. Drugs. If you haven't been addicted, you don't know. We've done this. So I'm not saying that they don't care. They just don't have the understanding to have that depth of care that we're talking about and that I talk about. Is
let me do a twist on this for a second, okay? Because this will interest you, and this is the first time I'm coming live with this information, everyone. So my husband, who co-founded the companies with me, has autism. And I'm always like, we can't do an interview and be like, oh, founded by someone that's dyslexic and autistic. I'm like, we sound like a bunch of wackadoos. But the truth is, he is
autistic. That's a hell of a house.
Yeah, and he is the most genius. Like when I say he can smell a book and repeat every single word in that book and get 100 or whatever 1,000% on any test. But he told me growing up, we're bonded in a unique way that we both felt so different growing up. So just as there needs to be a program for dyslexic, there's people that are very, very bright, going through school, struggling, getting into trouble. It's just on the opposite end of the spectrum. So I don't know why in today's day and age that we haven't evolved and created a more appropriate learning where everyone can thrive at every level.
Right.
It seems like the schools are made for like mediocre, like average. But if you're crazy smart, like when I say smart, I mean being able to take a test, they get just as bored and troubled in school as someone like myself that struggled with the tests.
Yep. And you know what? And this is one of the things when you talk about the evolving education, because this is what, and we've talked about this a million times. And Brent says, like, we have to educate before there's going to be change. And it's so true. And you can do little things, but like literally senior year, my son's English is all on Shakespeare. And okay, Shakespeare, whatever. I mean, first of all, when you're dyslexic, that's so hard. I mean, we talk about Cliff Notes, like that was like, Cliff was like, I was like, oh my God, I love Cliff. If I could meet Cliff, like, I mean, Cliff Notes were what it was. And then Friends, I'd be like, okay, I read like 5 pages. Please tell me the rest of it. Or like, where can I get this? But the fact that we still are doing Shakespeare. Yes, he was brilliant. Yes, people love him. But why can't they make that as an elective? Hey, if you want to take Shakespeare, but this is a 12th grade curriculum, okay, where you have to take it. There has been so many other authors out there that have done so many other things. Why haven't we evolved? Why? That makes me really angry, actually. Really angry.
Because, everybody talks about change, okay? To rewrite a curriculum, it starts from the top, right? In Washington. But they don't have it. They don't know it. So why do we expect somebody who doesn't have it, doesn't understand, to go make a change? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I break my leg. I'm going to go Home Depot, get some tape. No, they don't know. So we have to, if you want change, and I agree, we talk about change happens when they understand it. We're talking just as Shakespeare's Chinese to us, we're talking Chinese to them till you educate them.
Mm-hmm. It's beyond frustrating for me because I'm one of those people that if I'm going to complain about it, I want to figure out a solution to fix it. And I don't see the light of how I can help create change from the top down. But I do love this conversation and these small steps in the right direction of creating awareness. Because if we can help the parents feel more empowered that like there's a lot of other people like their children out there that have done great in life and there's nothing wrong with that. Or if we can empower teachers that care, that will take the time to listen to this, to say, okay, maybe my approach with this kid, maybe it could be a little bit more open-minded, that I can't expect my student to do X, Y, and Z because they just think differently, and that would be my wish.
No, and I 100% agree with you. And you know what? I've throughout, because Montgomery was in public school, private school, and then public school again. So he was, re-put in the system, as they say, which I hate the whole term and everything. But there were so many times where we would run across the teacher and they would claim to understand, right? And again, I would send them articles or be like, can we get on a call? Can I show you this video? And a lot of times they would say, there was a few that would be like, okay, I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, okay. And I'm not going to discount that you know what you're doing. I know that you think that you are, but do you, again, as we're talking about the understanding, but I've had so many say to me, you know what, thank you, because when we are in school, we're not taught anything about it. So again, this is where it comes from the top. This is where we can't say like certain like education system is broken altogether. It's not just the teachers. And we were talking to Ashley from Newberry, and she was saying that it's the people in the suits that are not in education that are making these changes. And there's so many good teachers that are being thrown away because they're so frustrated that they can't go and fight anymore. They're tired. They're tired because they know that they can't make those changes. And that's why I think it's important what we're doing. And then Brent, your foundation, what you're doing with the foundation is there needs to be more people come together, not just little pieces all around. More people come together as a whole, because sometimes when there's more of a group and it becomes louder, and the more that we can talk about this and gather more people that will say, listen to this and be like, oh my gosh, thank you, I learned something from this, the more that, again, we'll chip away and make the change.
Well, that's why we have these conversations, honestly, like this. That's why I'm Mr. Negative to you.
No, realist. Come on. Call yourself the realist.
to tell the truth, that's what's out there. Dyslexia can be a gift. Can you get there to make it a gift? That's that is and that what that means is be okay with who you are and what you have and how your journey is and your path. So many people aren't.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting and ironic that this podcast coincides with right after this. It's the only available time that they can meet with me at the school. And I'm meeting with 2 principals, literally shitting myself. And I'm speaking up, stepping out of my comfort zone, because there's certain things happening at the school that need to improve and need to change. And the little girl in me is like dying, because I get such feelings when I enter school and have to have these conversations. But to me, it's like common sense. Like, we need to create the most beautiful, safe environment for our children. And if we're not doing that, why are we in private school? Like, why are we even here talking at this private school, But one of the reasons I identified with, because Juliet, I appear confident, but I'm not like Juliet. I care so much about what other people think to a fault, and I'm a people pleaser. Like, I'll go out of my way to make sure someone likes me in a really unhealthy way to feel better. And I think that's part of my survival mode as a kid, because I knew if someone liked me, I could get help, or a teacher would like me and help me, flutter through, or a friend would help me cheat. And so I have, and this was something I recently identified, Julia. I was going to call and tell you this morning, but clearly I asked myself, why am I a people pleaser, and why do I care? Like, why do I care today if I go into this principal's meeting if they don't like me or not? When I'm doing the right thing by these kids that I love, I shouldn't care. Juliet wouldn't care. She would go in there and be like, whatever she wanted to say. Me, I half of me just wants to create a better environment from the kids, but the other part of me is petrified because I don't want to be perceived any other way than like pure and good. And yeah, so it's just interesting how we all navigate through life.
And it is. And I mean, I do think, again, and I know Brent will laugh, but I do think that this is, again, a personality things, and like where you were born and your birth order and all of those different things. I always, my mom would say, like, I was not a people pleaser. Yes, there was times in my life I was, and I worked through it because I realized it was not good for me. Like, and I think it was just how I was raised and life circumstances. But it's normal. And again, when you're saying that, it's all good that you know it, because it's you're going in with your heart. And that is one of the things. You have one of the most beautiful hearts that I've ever encountered, ever. I mean, you really, really do. You are the most giving, loving, caring, and you want to make change, and you are making change in so many worlds. But that's where it's the little kid in you that's like, I just don't want to be smushed again. Like, I just don't want to, like, those feelings. And we've talked about this because your daughter's in a grade that, when I was saying to you, going through the podcast with Brent and going through all the stuff that I've gone with Montgomery, there's times where I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm good. And then all of a sudden something happens and I'm like, holy fuck, I'm not good. And I can get a little angry. I'm a little more fiery than maybe you are. But that is, it is how we all are made. And again, being okay with it and talking about it and knowing, right, you're going in, but your intentions are so good. And yes, it doesn't matter if the principal's like you. I know my kids sometimes get nervous. They'll be like, Mom, please, like, don't, and I'm not a helicopter mom, but there are certain times where I'm like, okay, a parent needs to come in and do this. Now that they're older, it's not as much, but I will go in and I will call someone out on their bullshit.
This is not just the saddest. I could be going into the grocery store, to the deli department. And if I feel unrightfully judged and like the person slicing meat, I offended and they're mad at me, I'll be like, it will bother me for the next hour, to the point where I have to like unload it on my sister, because my husband will be like, why are we still talking about this? But Brent, I noticed, what were you saying about trauma? This is a trauma response, because I saw your reaction when I was saying this.
Yeah.
trauma I don't know about.
You know, we we got to go. We couldn't get gratification, self-love from ourselves for a long time because we hated ourselves. You know, all that struggling. So you go outside to make sure everybody loves me. You know, I always say, if you can't look in the mirror and say, I love you, know it, feel it, and believe it, you're not whole, right? So how are you supposed to love somebody when you can't do that to yourself? You know, it's a coach tells you did awesome or you sucked. Why are you listening to somebody that's in your life for like 3 hours a day? It should be coming from here, from yourself. You know, I did good, I didn't do good. You know, so hanging on to something that somebody thought you said, or, you know, your reaction or whatever, I'm dealing with it right now. You know, where I'm coaching is I'm for the kids. You know, I don't care who you are, what you are. I've been getting attacked for 6 weeks straight. You know, I don't care. You know, do you want to come after me? Go ahead. You want to try and get me fired? Go ahead. You know, it's for the kids. I'm for the kids. So as your sweetheart is, but you know, we've had to get gratifications, and you look good, you did good from other people for so long, when we need to get more of it from ourselves.
And it's interesting because I always thought I had this confidence. You know, I like myself in most aspects, just didn't like myself in school, which I guess was a lot of the time.
Yeah. So you went to school for how many years?
A long time. Too many.
So you went for, you're just a normal person. You go for 12 years, 8 hours a day. Try struggling at that. Multiply those hours and days and months and years together. And struggling at that whole time. That's a lot of fucking pain.
And the other thing is we talk about, because where Danielle and I grew up, really most people, and I always say this because everyone has their stuff, right? But most people were really good at school. They were really good at sports, and then the ones that weren't were, there was always, they were maybe from the other side of town. Let's just say that. I know that sounds so weird, like we're in Greece or whatever, but like that is kind of what it is. And so when you're in there, like we came from a really hard school district, and my mom and I have talked about this, for a long time ago, but she would always say, if we lived in like Cinnaminson or a different town that was close to where we were, would I have struggled as much, or was my sister struggled as much? Like we came from like a school that everything was top. So they were teaching to the top. And so if you were not, you were like, okay, let's figure this out. And then you were kind of like, you got the slow talking teachers, or the teachers that would say shit to you. I can't even... I've gone down some of that, but it is, I also think it's where you grow up comes in to everything, right? Your self-esteem, it's who your family is, who your friends are, and everyone kind of, sometimes you can't change that. So as you both are saying, it's so important to look at what you're good at and look at the things that you're like, okay, even if you suck at everything. I remember when Montgomery was little and I would pick out, like whenever he would have a meltdown, I would say to him, it's okay to have a meltdown. You're frustrated. I get it. Let's talk this through. And then I would kind of give him some things like, look at the things that you are good at. And he'd be like, okay. And I'd be like, say you weren't good at those either. And he'd be like, holy crap. And I'm like, there's some people out there that don't have all these really amazing strengths. So he used to be able to hang his hat on those, the days that he was kicking himself for the bad stuff. And, I think that's something important for parents. And we do talk about this on the podcast a lot, is to find those things your kid's good at, even if it's the stupidest thing, even if it's like, when they're taking the dishwasher and they're, undoing it and they like make it, I don't know, they have like a pattern, or it's like cool the way they do it. Like little things can go a long way at certain ages. When your kids are older and you try to tell them what they're good at, my teenagers, basically, stop telling me life lessons, Mom, we're fine. But it is really important, even as adults, as we're going through our struggles and our hardships and things that we're doing, to look at that little person that's in your life and think, okay, let me find those little things that they are good at and compliment them on it, and sometimes over compliment.
Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Everybody. Everyone has a stronger left leg than a right leg. You have to look at both of them. Because right now in the world, it's either focusing on the negatives or focusing on the positives, not both, to be able to balance it out.
Yeah, and I would say for parents out there that aren't sure, we need to listen to our kids. We need to listen to our kids as cues. Like, so for me, when Paige was really young, she would start crying, and she's a happy kid, crying, not wanting to go to school, telling me why she didn't want to go to school. And I knew right away, I'm like, okay, we have a problem here. But it's interesting, like my aunt the other day, who knows me really well. I mean, this is like a second mom to me. And we were talking about school, and she works at a college where people take their nursing or LPN exams. And she was so bummed out that this cute little girl didn't pass, and the girl was devastated. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know how that feels. It's the worst feeling ever. She just looked at me like, what are you talking about? You're so smart, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, honey, I have you fooled. Do you know how hard school was for me? Oh, no, it wasn't. Stop it. And I get this often. I'm glad if people want to think that school was easy for me, that's great. I have done a fabulous job faking it my whole life. But it is interesting as an adult when I have conversations with my family about Paige and her struggles in school. And then I talk about, I can relate because I had the same struggles. And my family looks at me like I'm crazy. No, Danny, you're the successful one. You're doing so well in life. I'm like, are you kidding me? And my husband would take all my tests for my job, so I would even pass to be able to sell the medical equipment I have to sell. I know, Juliet, why you're laughing. Once my husband, this is a good story, I wanted this job that paid like really well, because as we were building FetTech, my husband was home in the lab working on the product, and I was paying for him to stay home. So my sole purpose for a couple of years was to get the highest paying job within the medical device pharmaceutical world. So I found this job I loved, the manager loved me, and then they wanted me to take a test. And I'm like, oh shit. I go, hon, take this test for me. I go, but you can't get 100%, else they won't hire me. Because a salesperson in sales that needs a little bit of clinical background doesn't get 100%. So dummy it down. So he takes the test. Don't think anything of it, except I can't wait to sign on the dotted line for the job. And I get a call from the hiring manager saying, oh, Danielle, I'm sorry, I haven't gotten back to you. I've been fighting HR. I'm like, why? He's like, I can't offer you the job. You scored too high on the test, and that's not how someone in your position should score. There's like a range. So I go home like, hon, what did you do? I told you needed to get like at least an 80%, like, but nothing over a 90. Like, you got them all right. He's like, I made up a couple questions. What are you talking about? He couldn't
get anything other than 100.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Now I had to interview for a different job, which led me to the road I'm at now. So that was good. But it was just, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I couldn't get 100 in a gym test. Fuck.
I failed my driving test. Do you know how many times?
No, I mean, but you know, it is
the written one, not the driving one.
All of our journeys and all of the struggles, again, they build things in people. Yes, they break, right? I mean, they break you. And Danielle, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because we talked about this with Steven, and we were talking about, like going into the doctor's office and having to like do the stuff for the kids and all those questions. And I always hate the doctor for many different reasons, but like the clipboard is one of them, and this and that. And so I was saying I didn't have a choice. Like there was things, because I chose to stay home, that I had to do for the kids. And I remember being like, oh my gosh. And Steven saying, like him going into the real world, like after, when he was getting a job and stuff, and when he got married, he was like, okay, I had to provide. So I had to figure something out. And what I was saying to Brent is that he was in the professional hockey world. So for 18 years, he didn't have to do anything other than perfect what he was doing. Now, he talks about it in his journey that, there were so many times that it was like, oh my gosh, am I going to be found out? Am I going to have to go into the real world? But him just getting pushed through school, because it was like, okay, we know what your path is in Canada. Like, you're going to be a professional athlete. So we're not going to even have you try. But then him at like 40, having to go into the real world is what it was like, just such a different world, obviously. And then still having those same pressures of like, okay, I have to be the provider. I have to do this. I have to do that. And then not having those skills when you're not thrown into it at a certain age.
Yeah, you guys did it after college, like at a younger age, 20, 22, whatever that is. I did that at 40, 42. So you had 20 years ahead of me, more innate coming out of school, more adapted than I did. I was walking into the real world, handcuffed, blindfolded, and kicked down the mountain. And it's been a long fucking 8 years, I'll tell you that.
Well, I can't imagine because I know how hard it was when our sports journey. I always tell parents at some point you're going to have to hang up your cleats or maybe your ice skates, and what are you off the field or off the rink, right? You have to have more. Sports are so much more than who won a game, and because I used to coach also, but I can't imagine your journey because dealing with your deep demons inside, plus getting out later in life, plus your status. I mean, how many people how do you figure out people like you for you? Thank God you're intuitive or for who you are, right?
I
that journey
get screwed over every day, I could go on and on. That's where the friends and acquaintances come into play. I've been used, taking advantage of just about every single time. That's why I do a lot of things that I do. For that, for that reason. And so when it comes to a kid, I'll always make sure the kid's okay. And that's why I do a lot. I stand up to certain things the way I do, and intimidate certain people the way I do, and what I do is because I've been fucked over, more times than not.
I say that the most important thing in life, because we're all here around trip tickets, is you have to find something you're passionate about. Because I've had parents ask me this. I knew I loved medicine. I love helping people, but I didn't know how. I mean, the thought of continuing education was really scary to me, but I knew what I was good at. I know I can get people to like me. I can sell shit in a paper bag. Even though I don't really like selling, I like educating and I like helping people. So I found jobs in medicine, but also with sales where I would introduce new products. And I found products that weren't intimidating to me. Most products were, but I found jobs where I'm like, a lot of people don't understand this. So if I give just a little bit of what I believe to be true, I'm a rock star. And I felt very important in those roles. So I'm like, I'm just talking shit and barely know what I'm talking about, but I know more than the doctors I'm talking to, if that makes sense. Because the areas I sold were so misunderstood. And even to this day with my husband and I, what we're selling, we're just scratching the surface of what it's going to do to mankind and how it's going to help. So I'm a leader. I'm an expert. I'm a pioneer in this regenerative medicine space. But it's almost ironic because we know so little. And again, but I'm doing what I love. So for you, this journey, Brent, of creating awareness on dyslexia and helping people share stories, it's such a beautiful thing. And I think that's the most important thing. If you follow what lights you up and makes you feel good and keep going down that path, and then if something doesn't feel good, don't do it or don't act on it. That's what I've had to learn more in my adult career versus you can't push through certain things. And I don't need to.
No, it's funny. As you say that, the older you get, the more, aware, more understanding, that you are. I've pushed through so many things because I love pain. I don't have a lot of feelings. I've had
That's not true. I can read you. You do have feelings. You tell yourself that.
I didn't say I didn't have. I didn't say I didn't have feelings. Now, did I? I missed 60% off.
No, so this is because I've talked to him about this too. But what he's done is he is had to turn certain things off to be able to survive. And did I explain that right?
Yeah, no, it's that's why I was being a smart ass there. I don't have, I've turned a lot of them off. I still have feelings, so no question. It's just that I've had to turn a lot of things off to survive, and the door's been slammed in my face. I had to bang, I had to kick it down because that's what I was used to. I didn't know any other way. I didn't have the innate skills to go left or right when that door was closed. So, I'm still learning that, still trying to figure that out because, my purpose is the foundation and having these conversations and talking to anybody who reaches out on, addiction or suicide, I can go, list goes on. I can help anybody. And that's my purpose. I know Juliet says it's passion, but it's taken a long time to get here. It hasn't been easy. Nothing is ever easy, but it's, if you can find your purpose, because a lot of people never find that purpose in life.
They don't. And the thing I think, again, is really important is to see, because all parts of our lives, our journeys are all stepping stones to where we, or who we're meant to be. I believe in God, whether you believe in God or universe, but there is all these different paths. And when Brent was out in the, as a hockey player, all the tools that he got to kind of, get that armor, because when you're a professional athlete, I mean, you're either everyone loves you or they hate you the next day, and you're getting like yelled at in social media and all these different things. I mean, that's like so crazy, that's crazy. But so he learned and I really believe this, you learned as that time, okay, I have to have this armor because I can't take any of that personally. You hear from professional athletes or actors that like the first time that they were written about, like that they sucked, like how it hurt. And then they had to realize, okay, I need to adjust because I can't take these things personally, or I can't go look at social media. But some people can do it, and it fuels them. It fuels them to go out and be like, okay, I'm going to fuck with people because now I can not take it personally and I can go out. Because the other thing is, we have to think, when people come at us like that, it's usually their issue. It's not our issue. And that's one of the things I have always been really good at. And I think that's the reason why sometimes I look at things. If someone doesn't like me or they like misunderstand me, I don't think it's me. I actually think that, okay, I need to re-explain it, or like that they're having a bad day. I mean, and it's not an ego thing. I think it's just the way I was born.
I don't think it's me either. I just don't like that feeling. Mm-hmm. So I can identify with, like, I know it's not a me thing. They have their own issues. I mean, anger stems from fear, and that's within the other person. However, I don't like not being liked. I don't like when things are uncomfortable with someone else. It's so even though I have that knowledge of what you're saying, I still don't like it at all. Where like I love the fact that you don't give a shit if someone doesn't like you. Like, is that really true? Like, you don't care at all?
No, I really don't.
It will bother me, and then I'll have to like purposely distract myself and think about like what I'm grateful for, what I love to do, work out, do something else, and totally like defocus. As I'll stay fixed on why the hell doesn't that person like me? Even though I know it's their issue, I don't like it.
Yeah,
I had like 25 families have been trying to get me fired at the rink. I see them every day. But
then you also have the ones that love you.
Yeah. I've been fired from so many jobs. It's hilarious.
I
mean, I'm the queen of job hopping and creating a good resume.
Fake it till you make it, right?
So true.
Yeah. No, I mean, we could go on, and I know someone has a hard stop at 1, and we've gone 4 minutes over. So I'm going to wrap this up, but every person that we've had on word blindness this month, I'm like, okay, there's so many other parts that we could talk about. So I know that we're going to be doing part 2, because Danielle, again, what you're doing in the regenerative medicine space, I mean, I'm so honored to be an employee of FetTech. I mean, I pinch myself every day, like, oh my gosh, is this real? Because of what you guys are doing, but then also your journey and your story, and then what your journey and story, what you're going through with your daughter. That's a lot of that right now is fresh, and it's going to evolve. Like, this meeting that you have today is not going to be your first. And I know you know that, but I know that there's also reasons why we were put back together, and there's so many. It's so multifaceted. It's kind of fascinating. But it's not easy. It's not easy to advocate for others and stand up and shout from the rooftops, because this is where I think I got used to, like, I can argue and I don't care if that person doesn't like me, because I knew it was in the best need of myself or my kid is really what it was. And I think that sharpened those tools. But Brent, did you want to add something as we close out?
No, there's many rabbit holes that we can definitely go down. Obviously, Paige, you're going to go to the school and advocate for Paige here this afternoon, and you're excited about it. And I can see the enthusiasm on your face. So Juliet, you'll be getting a call from her later on to vent and be pissed off. So I hope you clear your schedule.
3:15 and 2:30.
I am here. But Danielle, I mean, again, thank you so much for joining Word Blindness Dyslexia Exposed, and keep inspiring and doing what you're doing. You guys, you know what to do: like, rate, review, and share. You don't know who needs to hear this. You don't know who out there has dyslexia, or someone in their life has dyslexia, or someone's struggling, or someone's dealing with the school, you don't know who needs to hear this and who can this episode help. So thank you again for joining Word Blindness Dyslexia Exposed. Brent, is it always a pleasure? And Danielle, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.